My guest on this week's episode of Suds Search is Alex Alexakis, founder of PixelChefs. There's a recurring topic that comes up on industry blogs and on SEO Twitter, the relationship between SEOs and web developers. Long story short, it's often a challenging relationship to navigate. SEOs complain that their changes never get implemented. Web developers complain that SEOs are frankly annoying. Alex's agency specializes in SEO-focused web design. In full disclosure, PixelChefs is SearchLab's preferred agency to work with on website projects. We've done dozens of projects together, and at least as of this show airing, we've never had one of those turf battles. The projects have always gone smoothly. Alex and his team won 2 major web design awards from the Academy of Interactive and Visual Arts at this year's W3 Awards. He has spoken at industry conferences like Ungagged and CMS Summit. He also frequently appears on podcasts and webinars. Grab something cold to drink and join me for a conversation with Alex Alexakis. We'll talk about the SEO advantages of building websites in WordPress. We'll chat a little bit about how to manage scope creep in a website project. And I'll finish up by talking to him about 80s toys and scooter rides in LA. All right, Alex, welcome to Suds Search. How you doing?
Pretty good, man. How's everything, Mark? How are you doing?
Things are good. I met you at PubCon. It's been great. You're our go-to resource for anybody who needs a new website, which I don't mind disclosing at all because you make these things for SEOs. So I wanted to ask you a question. You're well known as one of the best WordPress developers. Obviously, we use you, and I would vouch for that. We love working in WordPress. I think it'd be hard-pressed to find an SEO who doesn't prefer WordPress. I'm just one person, but you talk to a lot of agency people. Why do SEOs love WordPress so much? What is it about that CMS that people love?
I think the most important part is that people are used to the platform, and they're able to make the changes they need really fast without depending on, they don't have to depend on learning curves, because every time you have a new system, there's a huge learning curve, and learning curve is time. So I truly think that's the majority of, that's the main reason why people use it.
Interesting. So I heard about a presentation at the time you were just pitching this. So it had an eye-catching title. So the title was "The Most Common Problems I Found After Auditing a Shit Ton of WordPress Sites." So that sounds like a good place to start. Kind of to set the table here. What did the audits entail? What were you looking at? And how did you come up with this idea in the first place?
So I do a lot of audits, so it was actually the idea was given by another SEO, to me, because he says, "Hey, you do all this stuff. Why don't you just write about it?" Yeah. And And he said it will be a good idea because everybody wants to know, everybody uses WordPress. So it would be a great idea to actually find, share with everyone all the items that you find that are wrong or broken, right? So we have a lot of the errors, like put together, and we're still gathering the data because they have a lot of audits. So we're still trying to figure out, because, I don't want to just give out just like one or two things. I want to give things that are common, and I want to write down things that could be easily avoided, first of all, So that's where the idea came. It's just kind of sad seeing specific websites that they all have the same issues, all of them, like broken canonicals, internal redirects, it's just these little things that sometimes you just make these little changes and you can see the size skyrocket.
Okay, you mentioned two things. Internal redirect. What are the things that you do all these audits? I can kind of picture this being, you go through it and you're like, for the 1,000th time, I'm fixing this thing or that thing. I know you mentioned a couple of things, but what are the most common things that just want to make you want to pull your hair out?
Like technical or structural?
Ooh, that's a good idea. That's a good start. So I've been talking to a lot of. I'm on a run of technical SEOs lately, so I actually am interested about technical SEO, the sort of technical problems that you run into most commonly.
Yeah, so majority of the technical problems is like canonicals. That's number one issue. Like a lot of people set up the canonicals wrong a lot of times. A lot of times, especially if they use different themes in WordPress and they make errors, what happens is the errors create like pagination on the homepage, for example. Uh-huh. And then now you have a homepage that has 300 pages with Canon,
Right.
paginated 300 pages. So that's a big one. Then another semi-technical issues like, internal redirectors. So, they change the websites or remove pages, and then all the internal linking points to wrong URLs. My pet peeve is when, no matter if they use like / or non / on the domain name, they usually, have internal links with or without. So like, again, they create internal redirects, which is a very simple thing to fix, What other things? I mean, right now, a lot of issues with like CLS and, loading time and how the side loads and majority of the issues come from actually web fonts, and, it just takes specific time to just load the web font, and then it moves around and breaks the site, and, your site gets dinged with errors for the core web vitals. I think that's and these are, and then you have, again, people forget, multiple H1 tags, and every tag on the page is an H1, or every tag on the page is an H2. You have, surprisingly, you have, I've been seeing a lot of URLs with like, the ASC characters. So that's some of the majority of the errors we've been seeing.
Okay. I wonder this. I had a question about just kind of the life cycle of a website these days. So, as a rule of thumb, I get it. There's going to be a spectrum here. But if I got a website today, it was built by you guys. It was built by a good developer. How long should I expect to have that site before I need a new one? What's a typical website life cycle look like?
That's a tricky one. I think it truly depends on the industry. I think, like, for example, if you're a construction, like a big construction company, you might have the same site for like 5 to 10 years. Some of this construction, the big firms, like, they don't really do much, right? Like, they do very little marketing, so their site is there as a brochure. So as long as it looks good in mobile and in desktop, they don't care. Maybe they put up a newsletter. But then if you're like a blogger, right, like, or you provide content, right, like, most of these people will go and update the site for good every 3 years. Now, though, the thing is, like having your site, if you build the structure properly, you can just reskin the same site. So, and this is the main reason why we avoid building with themes, right? Like, because themes add all the clusters. Nothing against wrong with themes, right? Nothing against them. It's just the themes create, like, added extra components, and then makes it harder to update down the road. So, in my mind, to be honest, what I want is, like, I want to give a platform to the people that they can use for the longest time, as long as we can update the core, core WordPress. We can update the themes, of course, because it's a custom theme. So if they want to come back every 2-3 years, we can just reskin it. So it really depends on the industry and what your market is, the audience, Yeah,
I mean, what is that? There's something that you mentioned that I want to just kind of dwell on a little bit. So you mentioned the difference between an out-of-the-box theme versus a custom theme. And this can extend your lifetime. I imagine there are many more benefits to it than just, you have a longer lifespan for your website. What are the huge benefits of having a custom-based approach versus just an out-of-box WordPress theme?
I think the most important, for me, the most important part is no plugins. You know what I mean? Like, and you seen the site we built with you guys. Like, we have a full website doing whatever exactly you need with maybe like 3 plugins, right? Yeah. And it's usually Yoast and Gravity Forms and whatever system they need to connect to their like CRMs, right?
Yeah.
So that's the main thing why I love them, because a lot of the stuff could just happen with code. You don't need extra things, right? You don't need plugins to update your links, right? You don't need so that's why I love it. Where the themes, I mean, they usually like require you to download a bunch of plugins to make things work, right? So the issue with the plugins is what, like that they're written by different developers, and then one might make an update, the other one might not make an update. So now you have issues, technical issues internally that down the road might cause an issue to your website. And also, make it slow. I mean, there's a lot of reason behind that.
Yeah, I mean, like one of the things you hear a lot about WordPress are the plugins. Like the plugin community is this big part of WordPress. Your advice is really, really limit the number of plugins on your website, right?
Yes, I mean, yeah, I don't want the whole plugin community to hate on me, but it's
that's my plan. Yeah, we're gonna send this out. So, yeah.
No, but the plan is, the idea is that, like majority of the websites, like, it's just, they just need a simple, like they don't need a billion plugins. Like they don't need a plugin to redirect stuff, right? Just put in htaccess. If you cannot do it from htaccess, do it through the server. They don't need, there's a lot of plugins that kind of like defeat the purpose of programming, right? Like, so, and again, the senior developer here on my team, she's very anti-plugin. And so she has kind of embedded all this, you find ways to not use the plugins on the website and build something clean. But again, you can still have a fast website with plugins in there, but ideally, I prefer not to have it. If we can avoid it, we can just avoid it.
Well, another reason about plugins, it kind of gets to a point about one of the only knocks on WordPress is that they do get hacked. The sites do get hacked from time to time. Whatever the latest figure is, it's like last thing I heard, it was like 40% of the World Wide Web is on WordPress or something like that. So it's definitely a big target. So I can see why it gets hacked more. Mm-hmm. But getting hacked is bad for reasons beyond SEO or beyond PPC. Beyond search reasons. It can really impact a business's ability to just operate. So to help business owners avoid that, what are some of the most common mistakes you see website owners making with their security?
Well, the first thing that I see, first of all, the passwords. Like I get passwords that I'm like, that's your business name with 1, 2, 3 at the end, right? Like that's not hard to figure out. Right. Or like for us, when we build, we try to avoid having the admin username. Just remove that once the site goes live. Remove admin. A lot of times depends where the site is hosted. We would actually put the WP admin in we'll put the whole WordPress sites in a subfolder, and then we'll redirect the index, to actually point to the subfolder. So like if we put a website up, it will be in a subfolder called like SC or whatever, and then so now to reach the WP admin, you're gonna have to actually type / SC WP admin. So that avoids a lot of the automation that the bots go. Because it's all hacked by bots, so they will go to WP admin, they will try admin, and then start trying passwords like 1, 2, 3 or admin. So so I think the username admin is the number one. Passwords, weak passwords is number 2, and then I don't know if that's a security thing, but it's something that as a business owner you should be doing is, back up your sites. Like so, we offer a service where we will actually make updates to all of the, the main core of WordPress. We will change the passwords every 2-3 months. And also we'll make sure that, we always monitor the site and back it up daily. So if something happens, with a click of a button, we can just push the site up live, and that way it saves a lot of headaches and money, if your site gets hacked and you depend on it.
Yeah, that's a great service. What your go-to hosting? Like, what's your vendor for hosting? Do you have a recommendation there?
So, you will laugh at this, but so my site has been on HostGator for the longest time, and most people are like, I tell them HostGator.
It's not a WP Engine or one of these ones. Like it's on HostGator.
It's just I have a server through them, and I have a couple of my websites there. But I mean, we use different ones depending on the client. I don't promote hosting. I don't sell it as a service because a lot of times, people want to connect their emails and stuff like that. And for me, I just don't want to deal with that. I want the people to deal with their own servers and work with that.
Makes sense.
So there's a couple of companies. And I'm kind of stuck with their names, that we have seen their websites, especially now with the Core Web Vitals, that they're like super fast. and we're always happy with, when I see people actually using them.
All right.
So, but cool. I can't remember the number. I'm kind of stuck on the name.
That's okay. And so the other part of this that I think about, so I really think about your job sometimes. We used to make websites in another life, and I got out of it, and I'm happy. There were a few things that I don't miss. Like, one of the things I don't miss was the number of people who would be involved in a decision. So there's a bunch of people in the room. It's not just the search marketing people. It's like there's going to be some guy who is like CRO person who doesn't like the color of the CTA button or something like that. What are your top 2 or 3 tips for just navigating that personal dynamic? That you've got a lot of people, a lot of stakeholders, a lot of people who have the ability to veto a decision, and you've got to get through to the end of a website project.
Well, so I always try from the beginning to find out who is the decision maker, which is hard sometimes, especially if you're in a smaller company, like a mid-level company. They have, the assistants involved, the marketing people involved, the CEO, whatever the company, the owner of the company. So you always kind of have to know who the final decision maker is, and you either request to tell them to tell you which person is that, or what you do is you kind of you can gauge to understand who the person is, right? So what I've been doing though is to avoid that is we work with a specific process, and the process that I use is very tedious, and also highlights because as you said, I don't like that color. Well, if you show somebody the design and they tell you they don't like the color, and again, that's opinion, is because I believe, you have rushed to show them the design, right? Mm-hmm. So what we do, our process starts with because again, we want to build for SEO, and no matter who comes to us, we start our process with an architecture. I start on a spreadsheet. I do not touch designs or Adobe XD or Illustrator or anything until easily maybe 2-3 weeks after we start the project, right? Okay. So we start with an architecture. We do a light keyword research, or if we work with an SEO firm like you guys, we take the architecture, and then now we do a design gap analysis, which basically says, okay, so these people are trying to rank for this keyword. So what are the competitors doing, or what type of pages are they? Are they informational pages or are they navigational pages? So that kind of gives us an idea of what each page needs to look like, right? If it's a lead gen, we need to have a contact form or phone numbers everywhere. If it's informational, we need to gather emails, right? So that's the first step. Then once we gather all that information, we'll move to the wireframes. So I use a tool called Mockflow, and we'll put together literally just black and white boxes, and we kind of lay out the headlines and text if already exists, right? So we do that, and then so now you have full wireframes. You work with the owners through that, because now we take the architecture, which is kind of outlines the structure of the business and the website, and then basically what we're doing is we give it a purpose, right? So now we need to understand what each page is about, and if we can meet the business goals based on the wireframes. Now, once they approve that, so right now we have two steps of approval already, which they have to be involved, and they have to give us decisions based on what we have found, right? So also at this step, we have shown them how the competitors are doing what they're trying to do, right? So then they get an idea of what needs to happen. And then once you're at that point and they have approved the wireframes, a lot of people that are busy, they're like, okay, this guy knows what they're doing. They know what we're trying to go after. And now what we do is then we take this information and we just put together, we give them, a design based on the colors they have, either brand guides or the websites they like, and we'll make revisions. And the hardest part also is that, we like to design for mobile first, which a lot of times is very difficult because people don't get it, Right. So we design mobile first, and then we actually give them the desktop and the mock-ups for mobile together. But I think it's the process. I think you involve them. As a business, I think every business person is trying to, they're hoping that the person they're working with know what's going on. They will understand their the business goals, right? So I think by following a process like that, it truly, outlines everything they need. So I feel a lot of people trust us to make the decisions for them after that.
I like that. Yeah, that scope creep thing, that's what got me out of websites. So, well, awesome. Well, we're running out of time. I want to get to everybody's favorite part of the show. This is where Greg gives me a question for the guests, but gives me no context. These are usually like funny stories or personal anecdotes, but I don't know anything more than you do, Alex. So let's see how this goes for you. He has two. The first one is scooters in LA. Does that mean anything to you?
Oh my God, that was awesome. That was one of the first times. I think that was Ungagged in Los Angeles. Okay. And Greg and I we just rented the scooters and just had a blast running around downtown LA for hours. It was amazing.
Hop on some birds. I love that stuff. That's a blast.
It was awesome. Yeah, awesome. I mean, I used to ride BMX bikes for years, so I'm pretty good with balance, with this thing. So we were just doing some crazy things right there, and it was a blast.
I love it. Yeah, he's a big snowboarder, so he's not too bad on balance either. For you, so you get a bonus no context Greg question. He says 80s toys. Does that mean anything to you?
Oh my God, yes. So I collect robots and toys and stuff. I mean, I can move the camera and show you a little bit around. There's stuff everywhere. Yeah. And now I'm putting a second shelf. I have, some of the stuff, I made that thing. So I got crank here. I mean, so I collect a lot of toys. And I'm running out of space, so I'm putting them in my closet right now. But yeah, I collect all of these toys and I love them. I started digging I just started buying all of these. There were couple of warehouses in kind of not so great area of Orlando, and these places were literally filled from the floor to the ground with toys. I have never seen anything like this in my life, and that got me into actually finding them, collecting them, and then I started finding the toys because I'm originally from Greece, so a lot of the toys growing up, like Voltron, for example, I couldn't get it, right? There was no Voltron, and then whenever Voltron came, it was impossible to get them because everybody wanted them. It was specific stores that had them. So, the first time I got, I found the yellow line of Voltron. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna find all of them, So yeah, so I started collecting, and people know, so they let me know if they find things back here, for example, here it's a little ET guy, and a friend of mine, somebody in her neighborhood, just threw it away, and they're like, hey, bro, I found that. Do you want it? I was like, hell yeah, I do.
I love it. Well, awesome. Yeah. Well, these are two good no context questions from Greg. So very, very well done, Greg. Alex, if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way to do that? What's your favorite social media? How can people connect with you?
So the best way is you can reach me by email at alex@pixelchefs.com or at pixelchefs.com and just click call, and then the all calls come to me.
Okay. Well, awesome. Well, we appreciate the partnership very much, and you're also a fun person to have a beer with. So I'm gonna give you a virtual cheers from Chicago, and now I know you're Greek. We'll go get some spanakopita or some pasticcio or something like that next time I get in touch with you. And
for sure.
Anyway, we'll be back next week with another episode of Suds Search.